Right. So first of all, let me tell you today's some good news. Today is the last class, so I'm sure you'll be very happy to hear teaching from me. Next class, obviously the presentation. It'll be a combined class, two classes together, starting 8 o'clock. I uploaded the timetable for presentation. Hopefully you all have seen that. If not, have a look. I also uploaded, today we'll have another guest speaker on the financials. I also uploaded a survey, so please do that survey if you can about the external stakeholders. You don't have to give your name or anything, just give me your feedback, whether they were good or not, that's all. So I can use them next time or not, basically. So that's that. What else? Okay, so regarding the exam, so we have had an internal meeting. So it is open book, so that's confirmed. Pushed for take home rather than sit down, which is now approved. So you all will be doing a take home exam. Same day, same time, but obviously you don't need to be here. So that's the other part of the good news. So the case will be uploaded, as I said, 24 hours before at 9 a.m. on Saturday, 30th of September. And then on Sunday, you have your exam. That's sorted. So you all don't have to sit and write exam papers, and I don't have to see your handwriting. Next thing, all your assignments are due on Saturday, midnight. It will not allow you to upload anything after midnight on Saturday. So your report, your presentation, your individual write-up should be all uploaded by next Saturday midnight. Okay? So please do that on time. What else do I need to say? Okay, nothing major except I hope you all are making progress with your individual companies. I haven't had any issues or complaints in the sense of that they are not responding or they're not helping. So on that front, I think things are progressing okay. So I wouldn't worry too much about, but please do get your presentation and everything sorted out. I do need a printed copy of your report next Saturday to hand over to the client. And you are also welcome to email your final findings directly to them. Okay. Some of the directors have confirmed that they will be in the presentation. I've asked them to review and give some marks for your presentation and your report. Okay, so they will be involved. Right. Any questions or doubts or anything that you need to clear? Today's the last class. I just want to finish up a couple of slides. No? All right, okay, let's go. So we left here last time the format of your report. I'll quickly run through a few things. I don't think we don't need to know everything, so we will skip that. Okay, so obviously we went through what consultants are used for. In your case, you must now know what you are used for. So some I know are doing analysis on the market, some who are doing analysis on services, some are doing on process and so on. So we looked at the process consulting as well. And then I am not sure if any of you are doing a new location or new country or new product, which I doubt, but if you are, then I would like to know the group, because I have to give you some facts that might be of useful. Okay, so different consultants, as you know, are used in different contexts, and these are just some of the things that companies use for, and all of you have a different assignment. So we will find that out next week, who did what and how was the outcome. Okay. Right. Then the summary or the framework that we are using or will be concluding with, this is just to give you overall what we have been doing so far, is obviously client has a problem. That's what you're working with. You define the problem, that is your scope. Then you started investigation. Then you had a structure or methodology, how you're going to attack that with your group. And then you were doing data gathering. And I was talking to somebody here who were talking about they've been doing a survey. Now, survey is a very difficult process. You saw from one of the external presenters, the data may not be accurate. So obviously, you have to start the survey and then digest the survey data very well to give a proper recommendation. And then obviously, all of you are going to give us solutions with an S there. Multiple solutions will be there from you that you think are suitable. And then finally, one recommendation or maybe two recommendations from all the solutions. There, the company is ready to accept your solution or your recommendation. And finally, I haven't put it here, is the implementation, which you all are not involved. But some companies too, actually, have asked me whether they can hire you to do the implementation of your solution, right? There are two companies asked me. Now, I didn't know how to answer that question because that's the first time somebody asked me. Because you all are working full time, and I don't know whether it is called moonlighting or not, whether you're allowed to do it or not. I am happy to talk to the individual group if you all are interested to try to, if you all want to sort of give them a project plan and then implementations plan, they are willing to pay for that. Okay, so let's, for the time being, leave it, but if they may approach you directly to help them. Okay, it's up to you if you want to say yes or no. Okay, right. The important part here is the communication between the client from day one to the end date. And some of you are good dealing directly with the CEOs. So if you do have some challenges or you think it's a bit sensitive, do talk to the CEO or CFO you're dealing with to ask whether you can put that down as a solution. But sometimes it may be very sensitive. I don't think you need to worry about it because you are doing free consultation. So just telling you for in the future, if you are doing something, always check with the CEO or the director that whether it is okay to recommend that. Right? Again, this is if you get depth of what we have been talking about. So we have two sections that you are doing. Some are doing technical evaluation, some are doing industrial evaluation. I think IIHE and a couple of others are doing industrial analysis. So obviously you have different mindset or different way of approaching the problem. When it is industrial, you are more research-based, survey-based, whereas technical, more internal looking. So those are the two variations. And then obviously you have all your competencies that you are using, your tools and so on to arrive at the final solution that you will provide. One thing I want to point out here is a couple of things. First of all, professionalism and ethics, right? You have to be very careful, your professionalism. So why I am saying this is that I saw many emails with a lot of mistakes, spelling, grammar, some even spelled the company name wrong. Some even spelled the person's name wrong, right? And wrote a mail. So that straight away tells the person you all are not serious. In your case, it doesn't matter because remember, you all are students, you are just doing an assignment. But at all times, you have to be careful. Anything you do, whether you're referring to something in your own organization or something outside, doesn't matter. Always be professional. But always be, check your work before you give it. Check, make sure that what you are doing. I mean, you'll be out in the corporate world very soon. I mean, you're already there, but, as you go higher up, your subordinates will look at you. And you become the example. And if you are not careful, if you are not professional, if you are not the language you use and so on, they think it is okay. And I'm telling you, the problem I'm facing, The new generation, the Z generation, they are completely different. And some of you belong to that. They are different. Their outlook in life is different. They are not interested in certain things like we were interested when we were young, right? Their outlook is different. They were born with the mobile phones, right? So they think social media and friends in social media is the best thing for them. That's their belief. That's okay. But if you allow those things in your organization to behave in the same way, then it becomes an issue in a corporate. Okay, so you just be careful on things that you do. So I'll give you some examples later. Okay, and the middle one there, personal and professional development, or you're developing your skill, right? Continuously learn, continuously read, continuously see what's happening. So if you don't do that, you can't give the best solution upfront. Okay, you need to be careful not to be a dinosaur. Always be in the front end, not being a old hand. So be up to date with your business consulting. And emotional intelligence. Now I know you'll have studied emotional intelligence and done a lot of things, but it's very important that you adapt, that you are able to change, do things differently, and look at yourself and make sure that you are changing, you are developing, right? That you are able to adapt to changes as required. Don't be fixed in a certain way. This final few slides, I'm not going to go through them. We have touched on some of them. This is if you're going to do a contract with your client, what are the things to look for, what you will need to address, the outcome that you will deliver, pushing your client outside the comfort zone. Be very careful. Avoid fights or flights, both. You don't want to get kicked out and get a bad name out of that. And always look for a solution that it's a win-win for everybody, not only just for you, but I mean, it's the employer, employee, industry, and so on, right? So it's when you give a solution, always look for that. But your contract must say what you are going to deliver. So these are some of the points that you need to consider. So content of the contract, we have touched on that. So I will skip through that. Engagement plan, you all are using that. I have seen two or three, I can't remember, actually wrote a nice engagement plan, a scope document, and gave it to the client. They were very happy with that. Responsibilities, make sure that when you are working responsibly and making sure that you are not taking sides. Very important, you don't take sides, not the CEO sides or the employers. Okay, make sure that you have a clear vision, clear role defined, focus on the role. Don't go around in circles. Okay, it's very easy to do that. Very easy to do things that is you see is wrong. Don't go outside your scope. Your scope is this, define that, do that. If you see other things, you can note it down and report it, saying there are other things you can do to improve or change or whatever, but don't go into diving into solutions for that. Stick to your scope. Then obviously, as I said, engagement is very important. You have the right terms and right outcome. Make sure that that is defined in your document. And then obviously look for feedback, right? And that's what I did. I given a survey document to get feedback on the external consultants who have spoken to you all. I want some feedback, says whether they were good, bad, they will improve, whether to use them next time. I don't know, right? What you found in them. So please be, in your comments, please do give your feedback on that. We have seen this video. Okay, I'll come to that later if required. I'm going to give you an assignment now, okay? So, any questions? No. Right. So later on at 9 o'clock, we'll have a financial consultant coming in to talk about how they analyze financial statements. and how what they look for as soon as they get into an organization. So let Shazil come and give you that depth analysis. Right. I'm going to give you a physical assignment now. Right. Basically, you've been asked to build a tower. Okay. Asked to build a tower. So this company wants to build a tower for their head office, and they are said they want a model developed. The only thing they want is that they want a helicopter to land on top. Okay. A helicopter to land on top. You know, look, tower, you know, tower. Yeah, okay. Tower. Helicopter, you know. You're looking lost. That's why I'm on the last class. When you look lost, I get worried, right? So don't do that. Okay. So what he says, this helicopter has to land on here. This is a tower, and they said this tower has to be minimum 2 feet. Okay. That's all. So how do you know the weight of the helicopter? I don't know. So we will assume you will keep your smartphone as your helicopter on top of it. So it can take the weight of the tower. Your smartphone as a helicopter will go on top of the tower. Take the weight of the tower. Cost. It's up to you. They're obviously looking at the minimum cost to build this. Minimum cost. How we are going to do this tower? Right, it's up to you. In the building the model, you will use A4 papers, each costing let's make it $2. Each paper costing $2. You can use sellotape to stick together, each one costing $20. You will tell me how many you want, and I will give you this. You may buy after you have started the work. So this is your assignment. You may buy after you started. So before you started, you will tell me how many you want this and how many you want this. You may buy after you have started at double the price. Got it? So you can buy any of these afterwards. You can buy at double the price. So this becomes $4 and this becomes $40. 1 minute. Okay. The tower has to be independent. That means it has to be brought to the front of the table and not stuck to the table, just left there. So it's freestand. Freestand. You may not use the sellotape stub. Sellotape stub, that is a circular cardboard thingy that comes with the sellotape. You may not use that. So the tower needs to be moved from there to here for it to stand free. This is your assignment as a consultant. They have hired you to do this, but the scope at minimum cost. You have 30 minutes. Sorry, you have 20 minutes to do this. Right? Okay, I'll tell you when to start. A4 sheets I have. You may not use your own A4 sheets. You may not use your own whatever rubbish you have. You can use scissors to cut or whatever methods you want. You can't stick foot rulers inside and all those things. Remember, it's not the first time I'm doing it, huh? Right? Yes. Huh? What's that? Area. Support the mobile phone, the top. You have to support the mobile phone. It's right. That is, assume it's a helicopter. Yeah. Any other question? I am your client. You have next 2 minutes to ask me any doubts. I'm your CEO of the company. Yeah, I was going to say that groups is a bit difficult to do it in your own group. So there's not enough people. So what I suggest is the 5 of you get together. The 5 of you get together, right? With these 3, which I will talk about later. These 5 get together, 3. Will you go with them, the front? You go with them. You are 4, right? Actually, no. The 2 of you turn around, yeah? 2 of you turn around. The 3 of you, can you join with these 3? Please, the 2 of you turn around. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Sorry, online team, you are unable to participate, but you can watch the fun and help your students or your fellow colleagues to make this tower. Okay, very strict on time. Okay, so you fail in 20 minutes if the tower is not up in the front. All right. Any other questions? Can we start? Yeah, okay. Right. So you're good. All right. So start time 8:28. Finish time 8:58. Sorry, 20 minutes. 8:48. Remember the scope, minimum cost. Whenever you are ready, you can come and buy the stuff from me. Whenever you are ready. Huh? Yes. USB gun, huh? Yes. Next week, I know. Yesterday sign kara de. Yesterday why ATN me. Sign kala ne. Oh, Dubai why me? Now sangatek lagi. How was it? Okay. Which hotel? I mean, in the intercontinental holiday in Nigel. Yeah, holiday in. And I went back to hotel like that. Now sangatek iwa hoga. Level එක එච්චර හොඳ නෑනේ. Why number again? Dewa. 13 sheet. What are the uncle? Yeah. Yes. Now just tell them you. No, no, your group. Your group two. Your group one. Okay. What's the group number? Just tell me your one. Yeah. 5 and 145. 10 next. What's the question? Tell your one. Oh, no. Appreciation of currency in Sri Lanka and situation of the country. Prices are gone up to you all bought the paper. You have 10 more minutes. Just make sure you have the right paper. Okay? You can take it account. Sorry. 25. 25. What's the group number? No, what's your number? 3. All right, 5 more minutes. Yes, you have 5 minutes. No. Done. Leave it here. What is that? No, what is that? Yeah, please stand. No. Ah, right. Okay. All right. Okay. Keep. Go ahead. No, you are. Why did you ask for 5 minutes? You're done. Huh? No, do everything I'm bringing here. Don't come here and start rotating things. Okay, you're done. Just leave it here. Don't need to test it now. You can take it. Just keep it here. Right, and you go. So your group, sorry, one. What was the group? Yeah. What was your group? 4. Ah, 4, you're 4. Right, 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes. Anybody want an extension? Shall we put something here? Anybody like an extension? Yes. All right. It's $1,000. Oh, you don't want. Per minute. Sometimes it's a problem having engineers in your group, huh? Right. What is it? Well, okay. Right, 2 more minutes. Okay. Just leave it here. No need to do anything, just leave it here. Okay, you can take the phone. Take the phone. No, you're passing around. Just leave it and go. Right. Your group number? 10. Right. And you are 1, eh? Yeah, 5. 1. No, somebody. 1. Yeah. Okay, you may go and sit down. Thank you. Right, thank you. Please sit down. Right, 1 more minute, guys, and then we are closing. You all may return to your group. Huh? It's fine. You can go back to your table. You can go back to your table. Huh? What can you do? What do I do with it? You can return the sellotape if you know. Good. Sellotapes. Oh. Okay, 30 seconds. Anyhow, cricket World Cup again. Thank you. Your group number? 9. No, your 5, eh? Okay, 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2. What is that? All right. Thank you. Right. Let me just quickly run through this. So group 4 bought 3 papers and 1 sellotape. They are the lowest cost, $26. Group 5 and 3, whoever that is, bought 20 and 25 papers, I think for the entire MBA program. Right. And they're telling me they have balance paper. What do I do with it? I told them what to do with it. $70 is the highest, which is group 3, or whoever that is. Yeah, right? Okay. Right, okay. I don't know what you all did with 25 papers, but anyway, that's fine. Group 5 at the back, 20 papers, $60. So these are the 2 most expensive, and these are the 2 the cheapest, 26 and 30. Group 10, you are right. 10, you're there, right? Okay. So 26 and 30 is the cheapest, and 60 and 70 is the highest, right? Right. So cost-wise, cost, scope, minimum cost. Now, test-wise. So let's start with group 1, please, whoever that is. Right. Okay, come and show your skills. Bring your phone, because I'm not going to trust mine on your tower. You are group 1. Okay. Which is yours? Make sure it's your one, eh? Don't put it on somebody else's. All right, Stace, well done. So that is group 1. What? Just to mention, I come prepared. Yeah, just about. You made it. All right. Group, so 46 survives. Group 4, whoever that is. Oh, 5, sorry, yeah, whatever. No. You are 4, right, come. Whoever trusts their mobile phone, please bring it. I don't trust yours, tower man. Right, this is the low cost one, 26. Right, okay. Right. You can take the phone. I'm quite impressed actually. Right. Group 10. Group 10. 10, 10. Yes. I think you might as well go and sit down, right? That's height, okay? Onna balan. Okay. 68. All right. Yeah. Right. It's fine. Group 5. One of the most expensive ones. All right. Yeah, keep this. Cricket World Cup. Okay. Looks very steady, must say. Height is okay. If you stand on the side, they can see it, how wonderful it is. Why hold it? Right, okay. You might as well go and sit down. Right. Right, next one. Height problem. Less than 2 feet. Stand from the side and do it. Okay, might as well sit down. It's okay. All right, let me ask you. Okay, this one anyway failed. They didn't have the right height. This one failed as well. These two. Now, what's common about those two? Cost. They were the most expensive. 60 and 70, the two that failed. What's so common about these two? They are the cheapest, low cost. Am I right? Am I getting wrong? Yeah? These two groups, right? So low cost. And this one was the average. Now, if you were the client, whom would you trust and give you a project? If you were the client, whom would you trust and give you the project? The assignment. You will trust the expensive one. You'll trust these two guys. Right, okay, wonderful. You're here? Yeah. No, come in, walk in. Right, so you will trust and give it to the highest. I mean, that's the general trend, right? You will think these are the highest. Come in, Shazil. Come in. Take a seat. You will trust and give it to the highest price, highest cost price, right? And you will think twice about giving it to the low cost. So if you have a USP Shazil, you can give it to him. You will think twice before giving to the low cost. And you saw the low cost. And finally, somehow it stood up, right? Consultation is like that. It's no different. It was a demonstrator activity that what goes through people's mind. Moment I said minimum cost, right? People immediately went for the low cost option. I'm not saying that's wrong. At the same time, people who are high end went for the best solution they thought was required. And you saw the results. The point I'm trying to make is low cost not necessarily doesn't mean cheap. Doesn't mean it's bad. At the same time, high cost means it doesn't mean excellent. Whether it's Rolex or whether it is a normal Casio, the watch time is the same. Right? So when you have to do an assignment, of course, this was very tight 20 minutes assignment. Not necessarily you need to have cost, price it high. Doesn't prove the point. I hope I made that very clear. Okay, so when you are even a consultant, when you are doing it, just because you price yourself high, doesn't mean you are the best. Okay. Right. So we have Mr. Shazil here, who is a veteran, I would say, in the financial industry. He's one of the best analysts, financial analyst, and I would say a well-respected individual in the analytical world or investment banking world. And I've known him for a while. Let me just give a quick introduction. I work with him very closely on multiple projects and so on. His thinking, is beyond, is futuristic thinking. He's also a consultant on the financial side. So let me just quickly tell you, Shazil Ismail comes from a very respected family. His grandfather is one of the independent fighters of this country. And Shazil had over 20 years of experience in diversified sectors from service, manufacturing, communication, and so on. He is presently a senior vice president and group finance director of Veracity Group, and has accumulated multiple disciplines from HR, IT, marketing, and so on. He has trained at top organizations such as the ENY, Brandix Lanka, Haley's, Airtel, Condo Group, and so on. He's played a pivotal role in the implementation of many strategic plans, IT, and other top-end organizations where he advises them on how to restructure, how to do financial planning, and so on. He's a very well-respected leader in the CXO forums. Shazil has a MBA from the wrong university called Colombo University, and is a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Accountants, is a CA, and also he's a fellow member of CIMA UK. He's also a Chartered Institute of Marketing UK associate member, ACIM. Further, he counts for over 15 years of financial and corporate experience, especially in corporate training and lecturing for professional education. And obviously, he has lectured in multiple universities, multiple institutes, CIMA, Chartered, ACCA, and so on. So he's a well-respected in the financial world. Very quiet gentleman. I worked with him last 2 years very closely, and doesn't boast or doesn't talk much about himself, but he's a very well all-rounder. You can go to him with any problem, and he has that consulting mind to help you to overcome problems. So I will let Shazil take you through the financial aspects of what he looks for. Thanks, Shazal.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks.
Got the mic.
Cheers. Thank you, Arun. So good morning, everybody. Right. So the objective of today's session is that in the event you're appointed as a consultant to an organization, what is the approach, what are the steps you would take, or a framework you can adapt to see if you can, how you can turn around the organization or improve from its current position. Now, I'm using the term consultant in this case, but this role may be played in different ways. You may be invited to the board company, given your experience and expertise, and you may be required to play this role. You sometimes may be in an organization and you may be placed as an independent person and you may be required to play this role. So how you would require to play this role can come in very different forms and ways. Understood? But in today's context or for this session, I'm using the term consultant. Right. Getting you to the board and getting you to play this role is a very cheap way for the organization to get things done. Right. Fine. So now you have been entrusted this task. The first thing is, why have you been entrusted this task? Why you? Why not anyone else? There could be multiple reasons, because it is important to understand this. Because if you don't know this, or knowing this will help you in your end output. You may be called upon to do this task because you're an expert in the industry. You have wealth of experience. So therefore, you're trusted upon this task. That's one. Second thing is, the people in the organization itself may not have time, to do these things because they are busy with their day-to-day work. They are busy with their own activities. And for them to sit back and to think and implement some of these things may be difficult. The third thing is, you may be that third person whom they are using to get the work done. I mean, if Sri Lanka government wants to increase taxes, they could always say, we have no choice to increase taxes. Why the IMF has told us to increase taxes? So that's a way of getting things done. Understood? So I was about 2 weeks ago working with a company or training them. And it's a very old company, established. The average tenure of a person may be 15 years plus. For them, to get them to dress down and come on a Friday, they had to get a third party to do it. Because the organization culture was such that you had an older generation of people, they like to dress and come to office. So to dress down and come to office was a big challenge for them on a Friday. Understood? So you may be required, or the organization may require a third party to get these things done. The next, the people in the organization itself may not be competent to do it. So then you are engaged with that task. So you got to understand where you fit in. And you got to have this perspective, because your recommendations, future actions, the way you go about your implementation strategy, a lot of things will depend on this. The approach, aggressive, not aggressive, likewise. Okay. So when you are given an assignment or when you are given a task, so let us look at what we will go through today. This is somewhat of the agenda, right? So let's get into the initial assessment. The first thing you need to do is, before you implement, before you recommend, before you start doing things, you must first get an initial or do an initial assessment, right? In doing this initial assessment, the most important thing is when you walk into that organization, the first 20 minutes, your gut, what does it tell you? Matters a lot, right? You feel the vibe of the organization, right? When you look at employees moving around from the reception, how they greet you, how they take you, the first person you meet, how many minutes you have to wait in the waiting room to meet the person you're supposed to meet, the general aura of the organization, the general vibe of the organization gives you some indication of the type of organization. For me, through my experience, that first 20 minutes sets the tone, right? I mean, think about it. When you walk into an HSBC, when you walk into a Dialogue, when you walk into a Haley's, when you walk into a Bank of Ceylon, when you walk into a MAS or a Brandix, the vibes you get, the feel you get, the environment is all different. Why? That's the tone that is set from the top. And that reflects throughout the organization. And that initial gut you get is your first assessment, right? So the key is you have to assess this. So from the very moment you walk into the organization, these are the initial things you gather in assessing the organization. Then the org structure. I will go into this org structure and company structure a bit more when I talk about the solutions framework. But you got to have an understanding of what is the organization structure, what is the group structure, is it a group of companies, individual companies, are there divisions, technicalities, things like that. What is the organization structure, who is heading, what divisions do they have, how do they spread their work across? All that needs to first be understood. Then you need to meet with some of the key stakeholders. When you speak to them, you assess them. Because end of the day, whatever strategy, whatever implementation plan, or whatever you're going to roll out is going to be rolled out by these guys, right? So you have to first assess whether they can do this job. Or where do they fit in your implementation strategy? What is this guy's nature? How is he? Is he a positive person, negative person? What is his knowledge? Is he a doer? Is he an exciting guy? Is he a guy waiting for challenges? Right from the CEO to the senior management you speak to, you need to get an understanding, right? So I've done, once a study in the ETF, Employees Trust Board, and to see how the whole process can be streamlined and made efficient. So when we did the study, we had the normal process which we follow, A, B, C, D. But for some reason, we followed it the reverse way. Because why? We found that the guy, now say if I'm processing something and it goes to you, I started the assignment with you because you tell me all my problems. That also gives you an indication of how the organization is working. They are not a solutions-oriented organization. Understood? So the mindset, then you have to start changing. So it's very important to speak to the top management and get an understanding of who these people are. And if they are not the right people, you need to get rid of them or replace them or train them or develop them. Understood? Then understand the challenges, goals of the particular industry, the organization. In this case, it can be internal, it can be external. You have to segregate that. Most organizations in today's context have a lot of external challenges. If you take the outsourcing industry, there are many. People are not there. Resource pool, people come and leave, it disrupts the operation. You take the garment industry, there is lack of orders because of stock lots in the European and the US markets, right? I mean, you take the banking and finance industry, there are challenges. Okay, construction industry, there are challenges. People are not constructing, cost of construction is very high. So you would have your internal challenges and your external challenges. So based on this, you can then assess, okay, what is controllable, what is non-controllable, and how you react. Okay. So the next is speak to the employees. Have independent chats. Random employees. You can even speak to the security guard. That guy knows everything what is happening. Right. So when you speak to the employees from different backgrounds, from different levels, then you get a feel of the organization. Because the first step in trying to solve a problem is you got to understand there's a problem and you got to understand the nature of the problem. Right. So you have to work with these people within and then get an understanding, a feel of how things work. Because otherwise, whatever you're going to implement, whatever you're going to recommend is not going to work. Right? Then the policy, procedure, the process culture. I talk more on this on the solution side. Ideally, an organization should be what? Process driven as well, as opposed to people dependent. It has to be what? Process dependent. So what is the nature of this organization? Can you implement a process? Will it be accepted by the management? Will the top start using this process? If the top management doesn't do it, then the junior guys or the bottom guys are not going to do it. What is the culture? Right? Then these 2 points I talk of in detail later. When it comes to your reporting, when it comes to your structure, when it comes to your finances, you got to go into a bit more detail on it and understand how these divisions operate. So the first documents you would take is your P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. And you would analyze that to see how well the company is performing, what are the issues that the company is facing, and what changes can be done. So I talk more on this in my solutions section. But the initial thought process here is that before you start, rolling out your solutions as a consultant, or before you start basically, coming up with recommendations, coming up with, ways of your implementation, this strategy, you first need to get an understanding of the organization. That's key, right? And you have to spend time here to understand the organization. Go around, meet people, understand the process, how things happen. Then that is your basic foundation to start the assignment. Right? Because if you don't have that, then you don't have a feel for the problem and your solution may not be practical. So after you do all this, after you do this initial assessment, then you could do a SWOT for the organization. All you guys know what a SWOT is. You could also do a risk assessment for the organization. Generally, when you do a risk assessment, you do a grid in terms of severity and probability. And the issues you have identified, you can put it into a grid based on severity and probability. If it is severe and highly likely to happen, then immediate action is required. So likewise, then you could also have prioritize your tasks, what needs to be done, and then decide on, okay, an implementation strategy. So the next thing you should do is, after you do this initial assessment, you should do this documentation part of what you have assessed. Right? Doing the SWOT, doing the risk strategy, identifying the priorities, key. Because if there is a burning issue and that needs to be resolved immediately, then you need to draw the attention of the management to that. Or you need to get involved in what? Resolving. Understood? Right. So now, let's get into the solutions framework. Right. Before I get in here, whatever solution you provide, the most important thing is it has to be practical. And it has to be doable. Otherwise, it's not going to go through the organization. Right. You may come up, you may look at books, you may look at how other companies are doing, and then implement or recommend solutions. That's not going to work if it's not practical. Understood? So you have to, as an independent person, remember, your role is an independent person. Whether you're a consultant or a separate finance director looking at it, or if you're in the board looking at it, or if you're a third party in the organization, you're playing an independent person's role. And the solution you provide has to be what? Practical and has to be doable. Otherwise, it will get killed at the report stage itself. Right? So now, when providing the solution, one important thing is first the structure of the organization. Any organization should have a proper structure. The people within the organization should know what their work is, what they are responsible for, whom do they report to, and what their job role is. In many organizations, what I found is you have an org structure which was done 1 year ago, but which is not revised. Now you have had multiple promotions, other team members have had multiple promotions, people have come and gone, roles have changed, all that, but the organization structure is what? The same. It has to be a dynamic structure. Right? So the first thing is look at the structure. Do they have a structure? If they don't have a structure, you have to have a place. You have to put that in place. Because what you're going to suggest, what you're going to implement will have to be worked out or done by these people. And the most common problem I've seen is that people say, no, this is not part of my job. I don't need to do this. This is part of, the other person's job. Why? Because there is no proper structure in place. The structure you put in, if there is no structure, should be flexible, should be robust, and should have the right people to do the job. Right? So when you study the structure, if you feel, based on your previous discussions, that Mr. A is not suitable to play this role, then there's an action point. Right. If Mr. B cannot play this role, or does not have the competency, or does not have the attitude to play this role, then you have a problem. Understood? So the first thing is get your structure of the organization. One is the org structure. Second is the group. If it's a group of companies, you got to know the group structure. How each company can help the other. Is there a relationship? So you have to have this properly defined, properly identified, key responsibilities assigned. People should know whom they report to. People clearly should know what they are doing. And that foundation has to be laid. Right? Next is you define goals. Now, this is very critical. You got to have defined goals, financial, non-financial, for all the people in the organization. Most companies go through a goal setting, KPI setting process, right? But sometimes it's done for the sake of doing. You as a senior manager or junior manager may get a role, but your CFO or your COO may not have a goal. Why? Because the board of directors have not given him a set of goals. He is giving you a set of goals. The key is you have to ensure that there is a set of goals set right from the top. And one important thing in setting these goals is that some of the key management on top, again, you look at the structure, should have a few common goals. Revenue management can't be only for the marketing guy. He can bring in the revenue, but if your operations guy is base up the whole operation, he's not going to get additional revenue. So your operations guy should also have some responsibility towards what? Towards revenue. Your operational excellence is only going to bring you that additional revenue. Now, in the industry we are in, say outsourcing. So you have Mr. X going and bringing in a client. Right? Mr. Y is doing all the work for the client. If Mr. Y doesn't deliver, Mr. X's client is not going to bring in or give you additional business. So there has to be some sort of a congruence when setting goals at the top. Where there is what you call common goal set, either in terms of top line, bottom line, efficiency, whatever. And the key top management all should have those goals in addition to their respective functional goals. Then only you can drive the organization towards achieving one. Financial management. Now here, I'll talk a lot on this area, on financial management. I'm segregating this into two. One is the structure, the framework. And then the next is the technical aspect. So you're a consultant advising the company. Before you go into the technical aspects, first you need to ensure or you need to check whether there is a framework in place. Are these guys preparing your financial accounts on time? Are they doing the audits on time? Do they have KPIs? Have you looked at the financial statements they prepare? Is it relevant? Does it make sense? Does it have the right information? Because whatever you do, you may be doing 100 things, but if you don't have a forum for this, or if the accounts are not prepared on time, how would you know? Are these accounts that are prepared, are these reviewed on time? Are there management meetings? Are there review meetings that happen? Is there a deadline to prepare the financial statements? Some companies have 5th, some companies have 10th. Some companies prepare their financials by the 25th. Does it make sense? Does it make sense then? If your financials for that particular month is coming by the 5th of the next month? No, how are you going to make decisions? If there's any urgent action to be done, how can you do it if you don't know the results? Right? So it is first important to have this framework in place. Right? Companies like MAS, Brandix have these reporting deadlines, timelines set for the entire year. Airtel, have the entire reporting timelines set for the entire year. And the teams are required to what? Follow this. That is where a process comes in. You can do everything, but if you don't see it, if there is no proper review mechanism, if there is no proper way of evaluating, then there is no point. The next is the internal control environment. Now, these are hygiene factors you need to have in an organization. If you don't have these hygiene factors, whatever you want to implement can fall within the cracks. Right? The internal controls. Are there policies? Are there procedures? Or can anyone just do anything they want? Is there a way of doing things? Very important. If these are not there, these are some of the first things that has to be what? Incorporated. These are some of the first things that have to be brought into the organization. Right? Control environment. Can anyone just take anything from the stores and walk out? Right? So you have to look at this. Or is it purely people dependent, or is it process dependent? Most organizations today, other than some of the multinationals, are people dependent. If you're on leave, nothing happens. If you're busy, something that should happen may not happen. Right? The most important thing is you got to have systems, policies, procedures, processes in an organization. That has to be set. That has to be reviewed, and that has to be updated most of the time, all the time. If that is not there, it's going to fall. Right? Technology. Some companies do their accounts on Excel. There's a big risk to the organization. There is no controls. So first, does the organization, does it have a proper system to do their financials? Is there proper segregation in the system? Who runs the system? Is it one person? Right? These are important. Governance and compliance. Organizations have to be compliant, and there has to be what? A governance framework. When I mean compliance, compliance in terms of statutory requirements, compliance in terms of accounting standards, compliance in terms of policies, compliance in terms of procedures, all that. And there has to be what? Proper framework in place, a governance framework to monitor and capture this. Some organizations have something called a CFO or a CEO checklist, which they roll out. End of the month, the CFO or the COO or the CEO has to sign off that all these aspects have been complied with, and they sign off. They take the responsibility, especially if it is a group of companies. You may later come and do an audit, or you may later come and review. But what happens is you sign off saying, we have complied with these aspects. Most companies have separate audit committees, review committees, remuneration committees in place, but to ensure that there is proper governance. So if it is not there, you need to recommend some of these things and ensure that these frameworks are in place, right? Communication and collaboration. Most organizations, each team don't talk to each other. There is no coordination. There is no collaboration between teams. And as a result, there's a lot of wastage and inefficiencies. So do you have a cross-functional team meeting once a week or twice a month. I mean, these are things, if it's not there in place, you need to set up this, right? Because through these discussions, meetings, all that, you can bring in some sort of a collaboration and coordination between the teams. And transparency, very important. So these are some hygiene factors which you need to check or see that is there in an organization. If these hygiene factors are not there in an organization, then it's very difficult for that organization to move forward. Whatever analysis you do, whatever recommendation you do, whatever, you may be making profits today, but if you don't have these hygiene factors or some of these factors, it is not, your organization is not sustainable in the, organization is not sustainable in the long run. Right. Now, I was part of Brandix at the early stage. They predominantly was what? A family-driven business. Right. But they moved in with all these corporate best practices at a very early stage. At that time, they appointed a chairman, Mr. Ken Balindran, who was an independent person, to oversee the entire operations. Mr. Ashraf was the CEO, but he used to report to whom? The chairman, Mr. Ken Balindran. Mr. Ashraf did not say, I'm the owner, I'm this thing, I can do whatever I want. No, that proper structure was brought in. They set up an internal audit division, a risk management division. Then there was reporting into it. There was an audit committee that was set up, a remuneration committee that was set up. So they reviewed the processes, systems, the remuneration given. Otherwise, if I'm the CEO, I can give A, B, and C a high increment and not X, Y, and Z. But there was a remuneration committee that streamlined these processes. And especially when Brandix moved from the operations from Sri Lanka, when they expanded to Visakhapatnam, when they expanded to various other geographies, you need to have this set of what? Hygiene factors. If you don't, your business is not what? Sustainable. And as you grow, you lose control. So therefore, you need to have what? These hygiene factors in place right from the outset to ensure that your growth is sustainable. Right? Now, let's look at some of the other financial management, the technical aspects. Okay. The two most important thing is what? Your revenue and your cost. Cost. You have to take a deep dive into your cost structures and see whether it actually is in proportion to the value it creates. There may be cost centers within an organization where the costs are very high, but the contribution or the value addition it provides may be less. So then why are you incurring this cost? We go into a lot of cost optimization aspects in the subsequent slide, but you got to do an analysis of these cost structures and see where you can reduce or optimize costs. Right. When an organization is doing well, that is sometimes the most riskiest. Why? Because you start building in fat in the organization. You start increasing your cost structures within the organization because everything gets approved. Why? Because you're doing well. So that is the time you have to be very, very careful because the cost structures keep increasing. Next, revenue enhancement. I talk about cost more later. Revenue. You got to understand from where your revenue is coming, how it is coming. Is it dependent on a single market? It is dependent on multiple markets, right? Is your pricing correct? Very important. For revenue management, one of the important things is what? Pricing. How do you do about, how do they do their pricing? What strategies do they use for pricing? Is there a pricing committee in place? Are the prices reviewed, frequently? Are some of the aspects you need to look at. And when doing the pricing, is all costs taken into consideration? All costs taken into consideration? Do you have a mechanism of taking all costs into consideration? Very important. Okay. Sometimes pricing is dependent on market conditions as well. But the most important thing is you first have to know what your true cost is, irrespective of what price you sell it for. Right? So you have to first do that pricing exercise of trying to identify what your true cost is. Once you do that, then you can decide on your market price based on other factors. But some organizations don't bother looking at their true cost. Instead, they just price it at based on market conditions. That way, you don't know whether you're making a profit or a loss till the end. Right? Now, sometimes in the apparel industry, they do something called value chain pricing. What do you mean value chain pricing? Say, for example, Nike is serviced across multiple organizations in the value chain. You have, you have the inbound, then you have guys who do the thread, who manufacture the thread, who does the sewing, who does the finishing, likewise. So, A, B, and C may be 3 separate companies of one group, but they're all servicing what? One client. So, in the whole value chain, A and C may not be making much margins as you require, but B may be making enough margins to cover A and C as well. So, there is a tendency now, or a lot of some companies do what you call value chain pricing. And when they do the budget process also, they do something called value chain budgeting, where the budgets are not prepared only for that particular company, but they look at the whole value chain of that customer and then do it. And then see, okay, whether this customer is what? Profitable, non-profitable, where the mix has to change. Understood? So these are some of the things which can be adapted. Working capital optimization. Now, working capital management is key to any organization. And working capital management involves everyone in the organization working together. What are the main components of working capital management? You have accounts receivable, accounts payable, and you have inventory. They are the 3 important aspects of working capital management. Right? AR, AP, and inventory. Now, there is a lot that can be done with regard to these 3 aspects. Okay? Especially AR. If you look at accounts receivable, if there's a huge outstanding, what do you do about it? How are you going to recover it? Can't you get those money up front? Can't you ask advance payments from clients? What is the recovery process? Right? And when you review the financials of an organization, when you review as a part of your initial assessment, look out for write-offs, have there been a lot of write-offs in the organization? Write-offs may be stock write-offs, if it's a manufacturing, or it may be AR, planned write-off. That means there's something wrong somewhere. That's an indication that something is wrong somewhere. There's an indication that there's a lot of inefficiency in the system. Provisions is another thing which you all need to look out for. Why have they made provisions? What are these provisions? The accuracy of the provisions. Who makes these provisions? How do they estimate these provisions? As you may know, provisions is another way in which you can play around with your profit. Okay. So these stock write-offs, trust me, I've seen CFOs going home, right, for incorrect stock valuation. As you know, if your closing stock figure is wrong or your opening stock figure is wrong, it affects your GP. Right. And CFOs do play around with these numbers for profit manipulation. Right. So these are some numbers which you need to look at. Now, when it comes to working capital management, you have what? Your AR. First is, have you entered into a contract with the client? Have you entered into a contract with the client with regard to your work you're doing? Have you read and understood the terms, conditions in the contract? Very important. How many days credit? If the client pays later, are there any, what do you call, penalty payments that are due? Dispute resolution, how is it going to get resolved? What is your liabilities in a contract? So these are some of the things you should study. And you should have a basic checklist of what should be there from a finance perspective in a contract. Because the lawyers will review the legal aspects of it. They are not going to review what? The commercial aspects. So if you're a finance person, you need to know what exactly is there and what are the commercial terms in the contract. Right. So AR management is key. How can you recover these money? AP management. AP management means your dealings with the vendor. Now, previously, a lot of people felt that, you don't pay your AP guys or you delay as much as possible, your AP guys. No, that should not be the case. Because if you are especially a manufacturing organization and you're dependent on your suppliers, your output is dependent on the existence of your suppliers. So you don't try to screw him, right? What you do is you try to get the best out of him. You don't wait without paying him at all. But you try to negotiate better terms. End of the day, his survival is also important for what? His survival is important for your survival. So when it comes to AP management, it has to be handled carefully. Right? The other one is inventory, stocks management. Now, how do you decide? Any one of you guys working in a manufacturing setup? Unilever. Anyone else? Fiverr, okay. So how do you decide on your inventory levels? It's based on what? Your inventory is based on what? In a production environment or in a sales environment, your inventory is based on what? Predominantly what? On your sales or your sales forecast. Right. So how do you get your sales forecast right? If you get your sales forecast totally wrong, your inventory, you may not have the optimized situation. You may buy less and keep, or you may buy more and keep. So now the key thing is to get your sales forecast right. So what do? I mean, there are a lot of companies that use technology now for that purpose. Right? Predictive analysis, data science. AI is used a lot in this space, especially in the fashion industry, to understand trends, to understand, market patterns. AI technology is used. So as an organization, you need to look at that practicality. Because with AI, a lot of things are changing now, right? And you are able to get more accurate information. Now, if you look at companies like MAS, Brandix, Hydromanis, they have their own research arm in the client's premises or working with the client. So before a style comes out, the client has worked with these guys, or your guys have worked with the client, and you know what is going to be the demand. You know what is going to be the production. So then you have what? Better, efficient inventory planning, inventory management. Understood? So in any organization, working capital management is key. And a lot of people think it is the finance guy who has to do this. It is not. It is across the departments, it is across functions where you have to what? Address this issue. That's why when I spoke about hygiene factors, I spoke of the importance of what? Having cross-functional team meetings. And if you're a finance guy, you need to what? Raise these things up at these cross-functional team meetings. Understood? Debt obligations. Look at the company's balance sheet. Look at the company's capital structure. Whether it is funded by debt or whether it is funded by own capital, equity capital, or what is the mix of debt capital and equity capital. If it is debt capital, what is the structures that you have used? Okay. Can you refinance? Can you reschedule? Right? Can you reduce the interest cost in any way? Some organizations, I mean, that's what happened to Sri Lanka, no? You funded highways with what? Short term? You funded highways with short-term debt. Sri Lanka as a country previously took loans from countries where you had a small interest percentage or a lower interest percentage, and the repayment period was what? Longer. So that structure changed from taking loans from countries to taking loans from private banks, where we went and took loans from private Chinese banks. So when we took those loans from private Chinese banks, what happened? You had a higher interest rate, a shorter tenure, and you used that money for what? To do projects which are going to bring you revenue in the long run. So there is no matching of income and expenses. So in an organization also, you would see sometimes organization taking working capital loans or taking bank overdrafts for the purchase of fixed assets, for the purchase of machinery. Understood? So you have to look at what your loan structure is, right? How much of interest am I paying? Why am I using these loans for what purpose? Can't I refinance? Can't I reschedule? And see how you can organize that better. Understood? Then you could see what is my debt component of the organization as opposed to the entire organization's financials. You could have KPIs, you could have objectives to bring this debt burden down. Whether you go in for fixed rates, variable rates, interest is something else which you can look at. Now, companies that went in for loans on fixed rate, say 6-7 months ago, We'll be stuck with that high percentage for the entire tenure of the loan. Understood? So these are things which you have to look at. Cash flow management, very important. How you manage cash flow in an organization is unique from organization to organization. But when you look at the financial statements, see, there are three key financial statements: the profit and loss, balance sheet, and the cash flow. What is the objective of these three financial statements? What is the objective of profit or loss? It simply tells you the difference between your income and expenses. The balance sheet tells you your assets and liabilities. You got to assess the quality of your assets and liabilities. And the cash flow statement will simply tell you the cash movement in and out. So don't look at the P&L for cash flow. Don't look at the balance sheet for cash flow. Look at the cash flow. Don't look at the P&L for asset quality. Look at the balance sheet for asset quality. Don't look at the cash flow for asset quality. So you got to first understand these three key financial statements and what is the purpose of preparing these three key financial statements. It has three different objectives. Understood? So cash flow management, first you got to understand why there is a cash flow management, why there is a cash flow issue. Where are you burning cash the most? What can you do to fix it? Understood? Then asset utilization. In most companies, there are redundant assets, redundant machines, bought, utilized once, twice, and not functioning after that. It may be computers, it may be furniture. So look at this, your asset utilization rate, whether you're making use of all your assets. Otherwise, see how you can, do something to generate some revenue from these assets. Because otherwise, there is funding gone in for these assets, but they are not being utilized to what? Generate revenue. Investment opportunities. See, your money will grow only if you invest, right? So as an organization, if you're cash rich, if you're doing well, see how your what are the investment opportunities you have, short term, medium term, and long term. And that should be in line with the company's strategy, right? A lot of people, a lot of CFOs play it safe by not investing because they try to keep the money for future cash flow purposes and then not invest the money to generate any return. So you have to do a lot of cash flow forecasting analysis just to understand, okay, I need to keep the right amount, but the additional amount can be invested to what? Earn some return. But of course, when you're investing, then you got to understand your risk return profile, right? Capital structure, I already spoke of, ratio analysis. Now, when you go into an organization, you can do a ratio analysis. So you have, first, you all have learned, right? The profitability ratios, the liquidity ratios, the efficiency ratios, capital ratios, and so on. But when you do a ratio analysis, you have to be very conscious of the industry in which you're doing. Okay? Because if you're working for a non-for-profit organization, just GP margin doesn't make any sense. Does ROC make any sense? Does net profit margin make any sense? No. Why? The objective of organization itself is what? Non-for-profit. Right. So you got to understand the key ratios for that particular sector. The ratios for a banking sector is different to a manufacturing sector. The ratios for a manufacturing sector is different to an hospitality sector. The ratios for a hospitality sector is different to an agriculture sector. Understood? But what we generally learn is this manufacturing set of ratios. GP, NP, ROC, yes, they can be applied. But you have to give it context and you have to analyze based on the industry. Now, if you take the agricultural sector, your GP margin last quarter was 25%. GP margin this quarter is 10%. So what does that mean? Is that good or bad? Whether what has happened, now GP margin was 25% last quarter, this quarter it is 10%. Is that good or bad? Bad. Good or bad? Bad. No. Why are we saying it's bad? The agriculture sector, the ratio margins can change because the product itself can be seasonal. Understood? So last quarter may have been the season. This quarter may be off peak on the season. So if you simply compare 25% and 10% and say, look, guys, you have done rubbish. That's not a proper analysis. You may have to compare this 10% quarter against the last year same quarter and say, okay, is there some, have we performed better or worse? So the key in ratio analysis is when you do ratio analysis, it has to be done objectively with the current context in place. Sometimes your NP margins, all that the previous 2-3 quarters, if you're an export-driven company, may have got factored in by exchange rate movements, which may have had a big impact. So do you do these ratios excluding some of these factors? I mean, at Airtel those days we do the P&L, right, on a monthly basis, and we send it. Once we do the P&L, we also do something called a normalization P&L. What do you mean by normalization P&L? Sometimes your current month's P&L may have got affected by 1 or 2 ad hoc events, which distorts the end bottom line number. So therefore, as much as you do the actual, on this side you put a column and you say normalization. You take off those one-off activities and see how you have done. And then you get a better understanding of how the business is performing. So when you all do ratios or when you all evaluate the numbers, another important thing to look at is this normalization. Are there 1 or 2 big hits, big activities that has happened during the period which has actually affected the numbers? Whether that activity that has happened is something that is going to happen all the time, or is it a one-off thing? Then what is your true performance excluding that? Understood? So, because that will help your decision making. Now, if you look at some manufacturing setups, you take a company like Dip Products. I'm quoting names because it's a listed entity, the numbers are available. If you analyze their what you call financial numbers during COVID, they had fabulous results. Right? Their numbers went up. Why? Because they were into gloves and medical equipment, protective equipment. Based on that, they increased what? Capacity. Now that was a one-off effect. Now you have what? Increased capacity. Now do you have enough orders to fulfill that increased capacity? Otherwise, are you stuck with that increased capacity? Understood? So when you are increasing capacity, when you are increasing scale, these are some other things to look at. Is that increase going to sustain, or do you have enough orders to sustain? Similar thing happened with tech exchanges. Now, if you look at their financial numbers, they're struggling. But previously, they had spent huge capital investments to meet certain orders. So at that point, do you increase your capital expenditure, put up plans, or do you go for variable cost arrangements? Do you outsource it to another provider? Do you increase your efficiencies? Do you increase, without going in for fixed commitments, can you go in for variable structures, right? Then, so these are some things which you would look at. So first we looked at the structure, then we looked at the goals, then we looked at the financial, you look at the framework, and now you go into the in-depth numbers. Then you must have a change management strategy. Whatever you recommend, whatever you want to implement, if the management is not going to accept, or if the people are not going to accept it, then it's pointless. So you have to have a strategy for what? You have to have a strategy for change management, right? Now, previously, when I was at Brandix, we worked with a group of consultants called Thomas Group, which is very similar to BCG, right? What we did was, we identified KPIs across all plans. Across all plans. Again, they got another third to do it. Because if the management tried to do it, there wouldn't have been what? Acceptance. It would have taken a long time with their day-to-day work, right? So we looked at the processes throughout all their plans, and then came up with what? KPIs and measurements, which was monitored on a monthly basis. But with that, there had to be what? A change management aspect also brought in. Because now, a person who was not measured at all, whose results were not looked at all, who just used to function, now is now being started to what? Be measured. I mean, you look at a government, you look at any government institution. If they tomorrow bring in KPIs to any of these government institutions to start monitoring, you think it will be successful? No. There has to be what? A change management aspect also brought into it. Otherwise, they'll be protesting and the whole initiative will get killed, right? So in an organization also, once you implement a lot of these strategies, a lot of things, there has to be simultaneously a change management process also that is run. Otherwise, people are not going to accept it, or people are trying to cheat the system. You won't get the desired objective of your implementation. Understood? So as a consultant, you should not only give you should give a total solution. Then you should get the management involved in trying to do this change management. How do you do it? There are various ways depending on your recommendations, right? But the key is there has to be some sort of a change management framework in place. Communication. The most important thing is there has to be a dialogue with the people, right? The moment there is a breakdown in dialogue, then what happens? You cannot implement your strategy. Then training and capacity building. So like I said initially, if you feel the people who are going to implement this, or the people who are going to do this, does not have the skill set, right? Then you may have to what? Train them. You may have to give them, if the attitude needs to be changed, you may have to give them training on that, right? But for you to see this through, these are other things. But you can't just say, okay, do this, and your result will be okay. No, it's not going to happen. You have to look at a full total solution. Monitoring and reporting is the other thing. After you do this, there has to be a mechanism of seeing whether what we have done or what is being done is effective. That's where I spoke about the framework. If you don't have monthly meetings, if you don't have quarterly review meetings, if you don't have a set of financials coming out, on a monthly basis at the right time, how are you going to monitor this? Okay, so these are important things. Otherwise, you come, you recommend, you give, you do, but then there is no mechanism to see whether it is right, whether it's achieving the desired results or not. And if change has to happen in between, then that change has to happen, right? So that's why KPIs, review meetings, financial statements on time, discussions, cross-functional meetings, all that become what? Important. And documentation. Whatever you do, please document the entire activity. Okay. So these are some of the solutions framework. Okay, if you are a consultant and if you are looking at providing a solution, then this is an approach you can take, right? So you have to make sure what? First, your hygiene factors are there. You have done the initial assessment. Your hygiene factors are in place. Then you start giving recommendations for your problems. And then you have to monitor and what? Control. So ratio analysis, I spoke about this. So you have the profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, productivity, capital structure, and the market ratio. One important thing here is that when you start computing ratios, make sure there is consistency in the basis in which you compute the ratios. Because otherwise what happens is you can't compare like with like. How Sri Lanka used to measure inflation has changed. So one time there is fuel in the basket, fuel is not there in the basket. Okay. So then how are you going to do a comparison? It's not going to give you the right results. Right. So these are some of the key categories of ratios which you can look at in an organization. And these are some of the main ratios. But like I said, it has to be industry specific. It has to be specific to the circumstances of the organization. It can be benchmarked against other organizations of a similar nature and evaluate. Right? So GP margin, operating margin, return on capital employed. These are some of the key profitability ratios. GP margin is very important. If you're a customer, if you're losing money at GP level, then there's something fundamentally wrong, either in your pricing strategy or in your costing. So those customers should be taken out separately and looked at, in detail. Most organizations do what you call a customer profitability analysis. In other words, you take all your customers, and for all those customers, you do a individual profitability analysis. And then from that, you can understand which customers are making money, which customers are losing money. And then you've got to take some strategic decisions based on that. These are some of the liquidity ratios, current ratio, quick ratio, working capital. Okay. So all this is to do with what? All this is to do with what? Mainly AR management, AP management, and inventory management. Right? So there is a lot of technology that can be used now for this purpose. Right? Then you have the efficiency ratio, that is inventory days, collection days, and payable days. So it also now, inventory days can depend on the type of organization you are, whether you are a company that produces for stock or whether you are a company that produces for order. What do you mean by producers for stock? In other words, you produce and then sell, like Damro. They produce and then they sell. So your inventory holding period can be long. But if you are a company that produces for order, You've got an order, you produce. Then your inventory holding period should ideally be what? Very small, because you should be able to what? Dispatch it fast, because you have an order in place. If you can't dispatch it, then there is something wrong in your logistics. Then there's something wrong in your supply chain. Right? These are capital structure, gearing, and interest cover, which we spoke of earlier. So in the interest of time, I think you all have learned this. So on cost optimization, these are some of the initiatives you can take to see how you can reduce or optimize your cost, right? Remember, it's not always about reduction of cost. It's always about what? Optimization of your cost, right? Just because you're doing bad, you don't keep cutting cost, and then, your hygiene factors in the organization also have been lost, right? So, like I said, analyze the different departments and processes in accordance to their value creation to the product and see the cost structure, right? Your HR department or your IT department, which is more valuable to your value creation? Is the cost accordingly in proportion? If your finance department, I'm just taking examples, right? So do that analysis, do the numbers, percentage of your cost as opposed to revenue, and see whether it's within the averages. Conduct thorough cost analysis. So activity-based costing is another technique that is used to identify cost structures. What drives the cost, right? So when you do activity-based costing, you exactly identify what these cost drivers are, and then you can see how you can reduce this, right? Then supply negotiation, vendor consolidation. If you are a group of companies, whether you can negotiate with the vendor as a group, you may be able to get what? Better discounts. You may be able to negotiate better terms, right? Technology adoption. Especially, there's a lot of technology out there. I mean, in the outsource space, there are, robotic process automations, digitalization, all that can be done to reduce headcount. Likewise, say in the apparel industry, you have this computer-aided design for designing purposes, right? Which all can be used for what? Reducing cost. For banks, earlier you look at the structures of certain banks, you look at how commercial bank operates, you look at how HNB operates. Some banks have the small structures all over. Some banks have big, huge, branches. But now online banking is there. ATMs are there. You can optimize, you can use technology in this case. Say, for example, in the telecom industry, call center, you don't need to have agents. You can automate the whole process, right? You call some of these banks. If you want a balance, there's an automated process. You don't need to have one person there. If you want a bank statement, it comes through email. You can have an automated process. So you can use what? Technology in these cases, to reduce your costs. Arul, I'll take another 5 minutes more. Energy and resource management. Simple things. Earlier in a factory, if you keep your air conditioners at 25, right? Standard, your AC bill will reduce significantly, right? When you on the lights, there is load management that happens, right? Where at once the load doesn't come, you break it now, then it reduces what? Your energy cost. There's recycling that happens in factories. So these are how and ways in which you can reduce your cost. Outsourcing, insourcing. If you feel this activity can be done efficiently by another third party, why are you investing in people, resources, systems, all that? You're moving out from a fixed cost structure to a variable cost structure. With COVID, that's what happened. After COVID, people moved from fixed cost structures to variable cost structures. Rent, you use the space as and when you require, as opposed to paying a fixed cost and keeping a large building. Understood? Laptops, without buying, you can rent. Okay. So similarly, they moved from fixed cost to more variable cost structures, because then in case there's a scale down or up, it's possible. Remote working, working from home, working from office, hybrid solutions can reduce your what? Space, right? Then salary and compensation reviews. See, a lot of companies need to assess their salaries and do reviews to see if they are paying more or less for the right resource. If you're paying more, then you need to this. If you're paying less, right, you still need to restructure, because if you're paying less, the guy who comes is not going to stay for long. Then there is what? Churn that is happening. And the new guy is going to give the end of the day, after 6 months, 1 year, you have ended up paying a higher amount. And there is a loss of activity. And there is a loss of control. So therefore, you got to do this salary and compensation reviews in a very structured and proper way. Cross-functional collaboration. This is very important. Within cross-functional teams, there is a lot of collaboration that can be done to reduce costs. Right? In some organizations now, share resources. Why this resource is idling here can be used for this purpose. This resource can be used here. There are resources with what? Multiple skill levels, which can be used across. Understood? Very similar to an all-round in a cricket match. Right? So, depending on the batting conditions, bowling conditions, whatever, you may drop a batsman and use an all-round. Okay? So, this cross-functional collaboration is key. So, these are a few case studies. I will share these presentations with you. Of how some companies, do or done or have done, cost reductions. I was part of the FedEx team that did a global restructuring of their entire route management and fuel management cost optimization, right? In Korea, the important thing is what? You got to get things fast, right? So much so the study was that, how you sort out the things that come into your warehouse is also automated, right? How it is sorted back end, how it is sorted in the airport, all that, there is a scientific way in which it is been done to make it more efficient and make it the operation much more fast, right? And these are, some other cost saving initiatives. Now, say, for example, in the agriculture and agro processing sector. Now, our group of companies, we have devised something called Inspectrify. We have devised a chip which monitors the growth of a tea leaf. And remotely, you can actually, if there is something wrong, you can take preventive action initially so that the crop is fine, rather than waiting for a bad crop and losing your revenue. So this is where technology is going to come in a big way to to revolutionize each business. And the biggest fear you have is now is that, okay, when you get up in the morning, one of the biggest fears now is what? You may be outdated. You may be outdated. Because the way it is happening, what you did yesterday is not how it's happening today. So as an organization, you need to recognize this fact. And you always have to be in line with what is happening across. Okay. So here, there are some examples of, how various industries have optimized their cost, right? Yeah, any questions? This is also annexed on, some of the working capital management tools which you all can use.
So thank you for that interesting talk. In my experience, change management is the most difficult
Correct.
part. Like, can you give some examples how you managed this part of the consultancy?
Yeah, so that's why I said when you do an assignment, first you got to understand the end of the day, the mindset of the people involved, right? Because it's people and processes who will run this, and you got to have the acceptance of those people to do it. So one is you have to first communicate, show the benefits, show why you're doing it, what is the objective of doing this, and manage them. And also bring in processes, right? So how you manage change again will vary from organization to organization based on their culture, systems, the way they operate. A family run organization is totally different to, a corporate establishment. So, but that is something which you need to do. And that is the biggest challenge, right? How you do it, can vary, but one important thing in doing that is what you got to have your communication lines very clear at the outset. And employees or from the top, they should not feel that this is something done behind their back. They also have to get involved in this whole process. Communication, getting them involved, participation, that is key in change management.
So in the context of the finance, could you please give some explanation regarding the green financing? So what is happening on that?
So there is this concepts of, ESG, all that is, happening across the world. But I will tell you my perspective, which I don't know, people may agree, people may not agree. End of the day, why do you do business? For what? Profit. Right. So that's the bottom line. And green financing, I feel, is used as more, if green financing helps your business, good. If it enhances your business, good. Right. But if it doesn't, then it's more, on this marketing lines, on the branding part, all that happens. You have all these organizations talk about green finance, sustainability, ESG, all that. That is there. It's happening, right? But end of the day, you must understand that organizations work with the main objective of what? Making profits. Unless otherwise, green finance is a very broad term. Like, say, for example, if you take the garments industry, labor force, child labor, all that also plays, but that has an effect on your bottom line because people won't buy your product. Then you change, right? A lot of people now are now engaging in green finance, all that, that's good. But mainly it is, it depends whether it has an impact on your bottom line.
So first of all, thank you so much for this presentation. I think from Unilever, my perspective, we are also having our KPIs mostly on USD, that is underlying sales growth, and then underlying operating margin, which is the net profit. And now, since lately, we are also very focused on cash, which covers APAR and, of course, the inventory that you were speaking of. And that comes as a challenge that, across Asia, we've seen inventory management being very bad in some of the countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, and even India. So you spoke about how digital technology is being used by some companies, to manage inventory better. Is there any examples that you've seen from your experience on how certain companies use digital strategies to manage them?
Especially in the FMCG, you try to understand patterns, right? Say, for example, if you take a supermarket, right, you can analyze that data that is captured in, and then you can identify what are the fast moving products, how is it moving, which days it is moving, which days to run your product, this thing. So much so that I know at sometimes at Kiehl's, why do they change? Today you have watermelon in front as you walk in. Tomorrow it's mangoes. Why? That's based on patterns, right? So in that sense, a lot of data analysis can give you an indication of how, how this, what you call, how the trends happen. And that's important. So technology is used a lot in that sense, right?
Thank you.
Okay, I think there's no further question. Online team, I suppose there's no questions online. Okay, so let me take this opportunity to thank Shazil. He's, as I said, he's a veteran in the subject. Why I brought Shazil as the last speaker? Yeah, there's a good reason. Is that what you saw today? His presentation is very important for your exam on 1st October. Okay, so his analysis, his let me put it this way, his governance structure, his cost optimization, all that becomes very useful for the 1st of October exam. So please do take note. He clearly articulated the ratios and so on. So he did ask me whether to talk about ratios. I said, yes, do talk about it because, even if they have seen it 3 months ago, they don't normally remember it 3 months later. So it was an important element to have it there. So Shazil, thank you very much for your time. And I know it's a Sunday morning, you had to give up your family time to be here. Thank you very much. It's just token of appreciation. Thank you very much for your support, Shazil. Thank you.
Thank you very much and all the very best. Thank you.
USB, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shazil. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. So with that, the teaching part is over today. Just to remind, do the survey. There is a formal survey about me and the program that comes from PIM. Do whatever you want with that. I'm talking more about the one I uploaded from SurveyMonkey about the external consultant. So please do give your feedback on that. You don't need to give your name. I wouldn't know who you are. Just say what you need to do. The other thing is, so everything's set for next week. Please be here on time. Please upload your presentation and be ready. All of you are not required to be here. However, the presenters are required to be here. There is no online presentation, but others can join online if you need to. But it'll be nice to have a team here. 6 companies have confirmed they'll be joining the presentation to be here, or not be here, but they will be online to listen to your presentation. Right. The exam itself, just to touch on that, is a 6-page case study and a 6-page of appendix. Okay, so you'll need to read through that. Mostly the appendix is mostly numbers, so that these ratios and things will be very useful. So you can analyze and be ready with it. You will probably know the question paper as well. So might as well you type and then just cut and paste into the question paper, right? Or the answer sheet. So it'll be very straightforward. There's nothing complicated. Okay. Right. So that's that presentation done. And your individual assignment, very important, 2-page summary minimum. Please upload what your learnings are from the assignment. That's very important as well. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. It's not a sit-down exam. It's a sit-down at home exam. Right. So yeah, it's what do you call it? Take home. Right. It's a take-home exam. And it's open book. Not that it's going to be any useful, but yeah, it's open book. Do whatever you like and write down whatever you want. 24. Yeah. What time is the exam? 9 to 12. Okay. So yeah, 9 on Saturday, 9 o'clock. It'll be uploaded. Yeah. Yeah. 24 hours before. Yeah. Yeah. presentation? No. The report and the presentation and the individual assignment. So you have to upload all three on Saturday midnight. Yeah. And if you haven't started, better make a start. Yeah, so the report needs to be uploaded as well. So because and I need a print of the report so that I can hand it over. Physical, I need a print of that report. It's up to you how you want to structure it. The presentation structure is up to you. I'm leaving to you. It's 20 minutes of presentation. Who wants to present? How many people present? All that is up to you. Okay. Yeah. Right. 1 hour exam. What? Yeah. Do you all have power cut still? Welcome to PIM. No power cut here. Yeah, there's no power cut. No, I never heard of power cut in Sri Lanka last, I don't know, 6 months. There was last year, yes. But I don't see any power cut now. If you are worried about that, do you need to make arrangements to come to PIM or your friend's house or whatever, who rich people who have generators and all that? Make sure you are there. Yeah. Right. And please, guys, the 2 things will be checked. One is your Turnitin will obviously check for similarities. More importantly, they are now introduced an AI tool that checks for cut and paste. Okay. So whether it's from Google or whatever that you all are going to cut and paste. So there's a margin of 30% allowed, I think, something like that. But please be very careful when you're uploading. Okay, because we've been told not to mark if the flag is red. So even if you are doing it in a group, I have no issue. You can discuss, analyze, whatever. I absolutely have no issue, right? I'm not going to worry about that. But they need to see is original paper from you. Okay. If you're not sure, you want to discuss anything, do set up a call with me in the middle of the night. At 10 o'clock will be preferred. So I can get up on the bed, log into the computer, and then get kicked out saying you're not part of the meeting. Happy to be part of that discussion. In case you have any issues, please do write to me. And I'm happy to answer. Exam paper is a very simple paper. Very simple question. There's only one question. I mean, there's not multiple questions. It's just 100 marks for one question. Right. So I have the measuring tape. I'll measure how many pages and then give you the marks. If you have done it in your own Excel, it doesn't recognize. If you have done it from another person's Excel into your Excel, then it does recognize. It doesn't. Yeah. Well, you will find out. Right? Okay. Any? 2 to 5? Okay, fine. So 2 to 5, but I will give the case study at 9. It doesn't matter. If you're having extra few hours, it's not a problem. Not that you all are going to get A+ anyway, so it makes no difference. Okay. It's 50% of the marks. And the presentation and the report is, so your individual assignment 10, presentation 10, and your report is 30. Okay. So someone asked me, what do I look in a presentation? I don't know what to look. Let's look at it. Right. You will figure it out as we go along. Okay. All clear? So this is my last teaching session. So I'll see you guys next week. Please be here on time if you're coming by 8 o'clock. And I'll be, we'll be starting sharp 8. Right. All right.